Welcome everyone to the co-op. Thanks for attending. Really excited. My remarks will be super brief. Thank you to Chris and Chris. I'm going to refer to Chris Jeffries as CJ and Chris Brandenburg as CB, just to limit some of this confusion. But really my honor and pleasure to introduce these guys. Unless you've really had your head buried in the sand in Baltimore, you've obviously been reading the headlines that these guys are making, which is quite impressive, right? I think the most impressive part to me is that they're actually just taking action. They're doing things. They're building companies. They're employing hundreds of people, thousands of people, and reinvesting back into the city. So we welcome them. Really excited to have some of their time this morning. CB, I'll lead off with you, but why don't you just tell us a little bit about your background and how you got started?
I'm an engineer by training, so I've got my degrees are in computer science from UMBC. When I graduated college 40 years ago, I did what every engineer did at that time, and what none of you should do if you're an engineer. And I went and did the military contracting thing. I learned a lot from that. During the sort of .com boom, I left and went to work for advertising.com 5 months before the .com bust. So not the best timing, but it was a great company, very entrepreneurial. It was an amazing learning experience for me. And after that, I left. We were acquired by AOL, oddly enough. We were acquired by AOL back in 2004. We were acquired by AOL in 2004, stayed on for 2 years, did the technical integration. At that point, I ran engineering for the advertising.com unit. And then left there to start Millennial Media, which was a similar business but focused exclusively on the mobile space. And so we launched Millennial in 2006. My co-founder Paul Palmieri was an executive director at Verizon Wireless. This is 2006, so 2 years before the really 2 years before the iPhone and all of those things. But we had a pretty good inkling that mobile devices were going to increase in power and be more relevant than they were at that point. And so we just went all in on building a platform that let people build mobile applications. This was again before the app stores, before Android was really out there. People were building Brew applications, which I'm sure nobody remembers that. But and we created the platform to let them manage their data. We created tools to obviously to do monetization and those things. And then as these devices became smarter and better equipped, we could add things like location. We could add better analytics and a whole host of those things that allowed them to make a lot more money and do a lot more customization for their audiences. And so from that point, we became sort of a trusted advisor in the mobile space to independent developers, and we're an independent company up until we went public in the recent acquisition from AOL.
CJ, can you share a little bit about your background, how you started your business?
Sure. Yeah, in college 30 years ago, I was in finance, and a lot of my friends, I didn't, just...
I'm the middle child between the two.
Oh, okay, great.
A lot of us, you go to school, you're not really sure what you want to do, and they're like, yeah, you should know what you want to do at 18, right? And so junior year comes around, like you have to choose a major. And I'm like, I don't know, finance, whatever. It's it's kind of a broad major. A lot of my buddies were that their fathers or mothers worked at Wall Street, and I was like, that sounds interesting, and you can make some money doing that. And I got into it, and I wasn't passionate about it. It was you weren't really, in my opinion, you weren't really building anything. I wanted to build something, and we saw that there was a need for just menus online back in 2004. And so myself and a couple buddies started this site at Penn State where we just basically posted menus. We then added online ordering because we wanted to monetize the actual transaction. And we were off with our first business in the online ordering food delivery marketplace industry or space. Very, very early on in the space, Grubhub was founded in like 2004 in Chicago. But just like any kind of one for all for one kind of buddies, starting a business, all have equal ownership. No one's really stepping up to be CEO. That business didn't really go too far, and it ultimately failed in 2009. We started Order Up 2010. Had some legal stuff going on from the past relationships, so we weren't, no one was going to fund us. So we just kind of, really just, rolled up our sleeves and just were blocking, tackling, doing everything from selling restaurants to answering calls until we got our first break with some early investors, and then Brandenburg found Brandenburg in 2013-14 time frame, and he ended up buying those guys out. We ended up raising money from Steve Case and Revolution Ventures, and less than a year later, there was an acquisition offer on the table, and we were acquired. Space is really hot right now, and I'm glad that we're with the company that's actually reinforcing, or just putting more resources into what we're doing, and we'll get to that more, I guess, later.
At what point, or was there a point where you sort of could pick your head up, as a CEO, doing everything, right, and say, wow, this is, really accelerating. Like, this is, I need to take a step back because we need a game plan for this to be, really big.
To be honest, the first 3 years was just about cleaning up a mess that we created, and self-inflicted wounds and just paying off debt. And at the end of 2013, we were on the brink of losing, our top engineer. I was lost. It was like, do I treat this as a lifestyle business and take 6 months off and while people back at home work? And I'm not that type of person. I couldn't live in my house and making whatever down south and hanging out with this guy and watching all the folks work. So I found a guy named. We were able to find another engineer that kind of helped us really kind of get our product to the next level and give that one of our engineers a kind of a lift up and then we found Steve Root, who kind of made me realize that things weren't all bad, and we actually were in a really hot space, and we actually had some good traction. And that was right at the time I met Brandenburg as well, and that was the time when I really kind of took a look at what we'd done and also the opportunity and said, wow, I was just I was beaten down for a number of years, and so that got to me, and it took someone else kind of that's been there, done that, built something much bigger to be able to help me kind of see the see the light at the end of the tunnel.
So sort of sticking in with the challenges theme, right, in the past UCB, what were some of the challenges that you encountered, growing Millennial, from really a two-person team into, I think including, 1,000 plus people?
Yeah. How much time do we have?
5 minutes.
5 minutes, okay. All right, then I'll give a quick story. So it's probably the same for every startup initially. It's getting customers, and our business was a little bit unique. It's a marketplace business, and so our supply side was publishers. So the ESPNs, the myriad Yahoo, and those places where you go to look for news and information. Our demand side is the advertisers. So people who want to buy the eyeballs. Well, it's tough to go in and sell to the supply side, hey, got all this great technology, you'll love it, it's going to be fantastic. Great, well, how much money am I going to make for that? Well, how does none sound? And so it was a tough sale, but we were sort of able to, land a deal, attract an advertiser, and then over time that sort of blossomed into something a lot bigger. And then it was just scaling the team. I would constantly sit down at my desk and think about, there are 500 people here that are, they're sending kids to school, they're paying their mortgages with this, and so I put all of that pressure on, on myself, and a lot of people in the executive team did that, and I was not being as healthy as I needed to be, not doing, all the things that I needed to be, and not even delegating as much as I needed, and letting people kind of show that they were part of the solution to kind of making this company really successful, and so. Those were sort of the biggest, I would say, thinking back, those were sort of the biggest challenges I went through.
Can you walk us through some of the thinking with regards to going public, not going public? Obviously now you read in TechCrunch every day, and Crunchbase, wild valuations. And,
right.
Does this make sense? Does this not? And
right.
Can you walk us through some of that?
Sure. Well, it's. Going public for us was a great time. It was an exciting time for us. we had some people come through looking at acquisition offers and that sort of thing, but we were always, too expensive, at the time when we were ready to talk, and then, when they were ready to talk at that valuation, we weren't ready and we'd already moved up. So we had this sort of chicken and egg kind of a problem. It takes you it takes you 9 months to a year to get prepared to go public, and then in sort of the span of 1 month, all hell breaks loose. You're in, I don't know, I think 30 towns in the course of 3 weeks, and you're, giving probably 20 pitches per town. So you go in and talk about your business and get them excited to invest in the public market, and then you go through that process for about 3 weeks, and then there's the sort of final day of that is when you price the offering. But the morning after that happens, you go to the stock market and you ring the bell, and they put you in this room. It's probably I don't know, 5 times the size of this room. And the only thing in the room is a gigantic table. It's the biggest table I've ever seen in my life, and you could I imagine you could sit 70 people around this thing. It's unbelievable, and they give you breakfast, and everybody's too afraid, everybody's too nervous to eat. But they give you the breakfast, and they give you the discussion of the stock exchange and how it started, and you start to think about who else sat at this table. And then they sort of whisk you out onto the floor, and you kind of walk up this back step to a balcony that overlooks the entire stock exchange, and it's just bubbling with chatter, and people are talking about what deals they're going to make and that sort of thing. And then as soon as we get up on the podium, everything goes quiet, and then everybody turns and looks at you, and everybody turns and looks at you. It's terrifying, actually. And then you ring the bell, and there's an applause, and so it was just an amazing time. And it's a lot more fun going public than being a public company. But
that won't fit into the 5 minutes.
Yes, right, exactly. Yeah.
Shifting gears a little bit, back to you, CJ. Can you speak a little bit about the Order Up brand and the components of that you guys worked really hard on, and sort of how that came to be?
Yeah, sure. I think early on I didn't actually appreciate what a brand is. One of the best things we did is we actually hired an agency to really help us with brand. When we came out with the Order Up brand, I realized that the importance of it, and it touches all aspects of the business, whether it's investors, people that you're looking to recruit and bring on board, people that you're looking to retain, your own staff. I mean it touches all aspects of your business, and I mean every consumer knows, everyone out there knows. Like, you look at a company, you're like that, look at Airbnb versus VRBO. Like, there's just a distinct difference in the brand. I just feel like I have a trusted experience with Airbnb versus VRBO, and I just think that you have to pay attention to your brand at every step of the way. It'll take you a lot further.
Just to pull that thread a little bit further, I'm sure that everybody wants to hear a little bit about the Groupon acquisition. Mm-hmm. Was that a component that helped facilitate Groupon's interest? Talk a little bit just about the process.
Number one is, as a company, you always want to be bought, and you don't want to have to sell. It was unsolicited interest. We had a product that was world class in the space, and we had a team that was even better. And we just had our heads down, and we were building out, a great product, a great team, and building our markets. And but what we were looking at is we were seeing the space was speeding up. There was a lot more money coming into the space at that time. And one of the things that I would recommend to any startup here is that be out in San Francisco as much as you possibly can. That's where people are, and there's a lot of money out there, and there's no doubt about that. And so I told the board I need to get out there. I need to at least say that tell these folks who we are, so they're not putting all their bets into these other companies. And this interest came in unsolicited from Groupon and a couple other folks. And we just thought, for what was going on in the space, for what we wanted to do and get done in the space, and what we had left to get done, it was the right move for the team.
Obviously, another major headline has been AOL's acquisition of Millennial Media. Can you walk us through some of that?
At this point, I think just the integration effort is really kind of where it's going to, if they do a good job of integrating the two companies and taking the best of each company, I think they'll do well. I think AOL used to do that really well, and they've had a number of acquisitions where it was integrated into the business well, and the brand stood out there I think recently some of their acquisitions, they just haven't gotten a chance. They haven't gotten them integrated as well. So I think if they can take something like Millennial that has those technology components that they're missing and integrated, I think it's a chance. It's a really good acquisition for them.
So, given that this is Baltimore Innovation Week, you've been part of the transition, part of building Baltimore's ecosystem of entrepreneurs, of small business, of startups. Can you talk a little bit about just some of the changes that you've witnessed?
Even the past 12 months, you've seen more more startups, more dollars coming into the space or into the city. I don't think that the rate at which it's coming in is quite there yet, frankly. Access to capital is tough. I mean, I remember distinctly going out Series B, and it was right when the riots were happening. We were talking to investors out west, and some of them kind of questioned why we're in Baltimore. And that's tough. It's tough to when you hear that, you're like, it doesn't matter about there are things going on in the city that are tough, but I think that the more wins that we can bring, whether it's Millennial Media or Order Up, I think that it brings people like Steve Case up here and saying, you know what, every city has its challenges. I can speak just from my own experience. Like we compete with companies that some of you guys probably use. The more you guys use us as opposed to the competition, the better. The more you support people that are working at other startups around here, whether it's Kinglet or whatever else, the better. I mean, I'm telling you that we have to take care of ourselves because we're a smaller city. And so support the local startups around the city.
CB, what's your perspective? Some of the changes that you witnessed. I know we've had this conversation a few times in terms of sort of what the perception of Maryland's core strengths are, Baltimore's core strengths.
I think I've read an article a long time ago about Silicon Valley versus everywhere else, and so Silicon Valley, it's different there. It's great there, right? But what they have is this sort of 5 or 6 or 7 deep generational startups, right? So you have Hewlett Packard was a startup in the 50s, right? And they're still there, and they do investments in startups today, and so there are people that are kind of going through that ecosystem. When I started at advertising.com, there were no startups really in Baltimore. That's certainly not true, but there weren't anywhere that was sort of a startup community. And then Millennial Media, it was probably I guess 5 or 6 years later on, and we had some AOL bought advertising.com. There were a handful of other acquisitions in the area, and there were investments back into a lot of people who left advertising.com, started their own companies, and so it's that sort of ripple effect that those things have, and I think Chris's point is a great one. The more that you can support the companies that are here, the more ripples that are going to be present, and I think it'll make us a better system. We are way better than we were, in 2000. 15 years obviously on, but there's just a lot more. There's a lot more awareness of the startup community, and legislature, looks at, understands the value of it a little bit more. We are 1,000 miles away from where we need to be for that. There's still a perception if you come out of an engineering school here, maybe you go to NSA, because I don't think people know how many startups there are here and what opportunities exist. And so I think that's a big opportunity for us. I think some of the the challenges and the things that we need more help with. Chris mentioned the access to sort of early stage investment. You can get a C round here. You can get a big round here. But very few people are looking to make an investment, a higher risk investment in these smaller companies. And so I think that's a big area where we're missing opportunity. I think there's some opportunities from a policy standpoint for the government to actually make an impact there. If we set up a policy where a big investor had enormous incentives to invest in small companies, as 10% of your fund is invested in Series A investment, that would make an amazing difference in the city, because you wouldn't have Chris having to go to the West Coast to invest, and you wouldn't have people needing to go to New York and Philly to find seed investments and to find A-round investments. Being on the TEDCO board and understanding a little bit more from, talking to more people in Annapolis, they're starting to get it, and I think they'll start to, make more progress on that front, but, it can't happen fast enough.
Yeah. Is that your perspective, sort of Silicon Valley and everything else? Or do you think that some people are awakening to, hey, there might be actually less competition on the East Coast and maybe tertiary markets, Baltimore, Philadelphia, and you're seeing actually people sort of pick their heads up, and start to sort of look under the cover, so to speak? Yeah,
I definitely think there's a little bit of the sort of economics of it all that people look at. I also think the community and the investors in Silicon Valley aren't stupid. If you want to go and get money from a company in Silicon Valley, they're going to tell you probably should move your company to Silicon Valley, because what's likely to happen is there'll be some people who are entrepreneurial that come out of that and they want to start a startup. They want you to be in their backyard, and so I think that's a little bit of a a black hole there that keep that community kind of in the Bay Area as much as they can. But no, I don't believe that there's any reason that that there's Stanford's a great school, Hopkins is a great school, there's Berkeley's a great school, UMBC is a great school. So I don't think we have any lack of talent here. I just think there are some of the other infrastructure pieces that we really need to kind of make things better here. That's awesome. Well, we're doing really well on time. Just wanted to thank Chris Jeffries before we do Q&A. And Chris Brandenburg. It was an awesome discussion. Appreciate you guys spending some time. So let's give him a round of applause. We'll open it up for questions.
Talk a little bit about how you balance big successes, but also if you want to grow Baltimore, want even bigger ones, and maybe not hitting everything you wanted to. I'd love you to talk about that.
That's a great question, because actually this is what we talked about. He was, Brandenburg was actually on the board, Order Up board, and one of the other board members said, I think we can raise a Series B, and then I think there's a bigger exit down the road, and I think that time will tell. I guess we'll see in a few years if we think that would have been the right call or not. For us, for me, it was I just saw that what was going on with this, with the space was just, it was crazy. It was freaking crazy. I was looking at valuations and the amount of money, and knowing kind of this business, because I've been in it for a while, it just wasn't adding up to me. And so it's like playing someone who doesn't know how to play poker. It's so unpredictable. You're like, and it's just like it was literally. I mean, and that's what I was looking at. And I think that as we thought about that, it just made sense for us to take this win now, because it was a win for Baltimore. You have someone like Steve Case coming up and saying, hey, Rise of the Rest is going to be one of our, Baltimore's going to be one of our Rise of the Rest cities. That's great. And so just him alone, if that's the only thing we did, besides obviously continue to invest in hiring people here, I can sleep well at night. I think, who knows what else I'll do down the road. I don't think this is the last thing I'll do, and so hopefully there'll be another opportunity, but I think this was a good one for Baltimore.
I think for me, I think there were a lot of things that we did as a public company that I think we probably fell into the trap. Went in knowing, hey, being a public company, it leads to short-term thinking, and we're like, we're not going to do that, and then we instantly did that, And so, when we raised the when we did the IPO, we raised $150 million, and I don't think we touched a nickel of it, probably for a year and a half, So we didn't really invest back just because we were paralyzed, and we our CEO and our CFO, they're pretty strong-willed guys, and they if they're ones that can't sort of manage through that, I think it's pretty close to impossible for a really small company like a Millennial Media to have some of the to have the breathing room to make the moves that you need as a public company. I think in everything there were probably opportunities that in hindsight we should have taken with that war chest that we didn't. But I think there's really throughout business you're going to have a million different things that you wish you'd done differently. And I think it doesn't really benefit you all that much to look at it. It's just a matter of what do you do next, because you can't change the past. So that's the way I've sort of coped with it.
Always forward.
That's right.
When you are choosing and hiring new talent, how do you make sure your culture doesn't become homogenized?
I think early on it probably does, right? You hire your friends, you hire people that you know and that you've worked with before, and I think there is a challenge with that. And I think over time you do want to bring people in that have different perspectives and that sort of thing. An interview is a terrible thing. You can't really get an idea of how somebody's going to work or how somebody's going to impact your business through an interview, which is not realistic. But within the first 3 months, you can kind of see, okay, here's somebody who's really making a difference or really changing the company, for the better. I think in the very early stages, you're just so afraid to take any of those kinds of risks that you just, I worked with Bill at Adcom. Was a good guy, and kind of worked hard and that sort of thing. So you kind of do that. And so for the first handful of years, Millennial was this mix of everybody we could get from advertising.com, everybody we could get from Verizon. And then over time, there were other, it's sort of the friends of friends of friends kind of thing that I think made it a much, much better company. And, at the point where I think we had a lot of different skill sets and a lot of different company histories that to draw off of, that was when we were doing our best, And so I think it is important to get sort of out of that comfort zone and get more diverse perspectives on technology, marketing, that sort of thing. So an excellent question. I think that's definitely an area to focus on as you get bigger.
On team building, just in general, I think one thing that I realized over time, I'm kind of looking back. There's kind of 3 things that I really try to do best every day when I woke up is just be open, be compassionate, be understanding of folks and what's going on in their personal life. And be inspirational. And so it's just like every day, no matter what happens, if you're honest with your folks, hey, there's a challenge going on right now, guys. We gotta get together and figure this challenge out. Be compassionate with them. Be understanding of what's going on, in their life outside of work. And then talking about how we're going to win. One thing, as a CEO or as a leader of a company, there could be 10 things going wrong every single day, and you have to find that one win that happened, and really kind of get that win to the surface. If you don't do anything else well, do that well, because that's really where you're going to, early on, you're going to have a bunch of people coming in. They may not know each other. They may know each other. There's going to be a lot of challenges. Just be able to surface that one or two, those 1 or 2 wins that you have, whether it's for that day or that week or that month, that you can really kind of hang your hat on as a company to keep those people inspired for the next challenge.
Come over here.
What role, if any, do official 409A evaluations play in either acquisition or IPO?
Early on, it was an art, and it was a painting I wasn't really, I didn't agree with early on, but it made sense at the end of the day, and kind of how it was put together. I think as you grow and you scale, it's all, as we saw in Series B, it's much more of a science. It's just looking at the metrics, looking at your cohort analysis. The 2 metrics that were most important to our Series B investors when we were going down that path were customer persistence and dollar persistence, which is how many people are with you, 12 months out, 24 months out, how many of their dollars are still with you as a marketplace. And we were hammered. We actually had great metrics. Those 2 metrics were great, but we spent weeks and months on those 2 metrics with the investors. And I think as a Series C and as you go public, those are much more important. Early on, I think it's definitely more of an art.
Yeah, I think specifically a 409A, as you get bigger, it doesn't really, when you go public, it certainly doesn't matter. As you get bigger, it's basically just a mechanism for setting a stock price. When you raise money, they probably look at that, but it's just a negotiation. So I think anytime we've raised money, it didn't have any, it didn't have any semblance of of what the 409, the most recent 409A said, So 409s to discount, is sort of has built-in discounts, for risks of the business, lack of a liquid market for the business, that sort of thing that goes in there, and that really doesn't factor into a fundraising decision as much. So.
Can you talk about any impact of technical debt as you hit these like hypergrowth phases?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important. I think you make if you were an engineer, you would have the tendency to never launch your product, right? Because you can do more and you can do better things, and you can you can get that last feature in or what have you. And actually that was my trap too. My co-founder was like, we got to get into the market. Let's go right now. Let's go right now. And so we had these sort of back and forths on what what was to a point where people would start buying it. And so you make, okay, well, to get to that point where somebody can start using this product, we need to make this concession over here. Maybe we don't break the database up the way that we want to break it up, or that sort of thing. We were not good at managing the technical debt back in the early days. I think we got a lot better at it further on, but we would get haunted by some of those things. IDs in databases rolling over, and then all of a sudden somebody's transaction is now somebody else's transaction, that sort of thing. Which is just bad bookkeeping. But those are the sorts of things where you can, if you don't keep track of that, and you don't keep a list of kind of where you're making these decisions, these shortcuts, it can that can become unwieldy very quickly.
When it comes to really early stage companies, what can you really do to poise yourselves to get more success going into down the road with different rounds of funding that are still really early stages?
So I think right from the beginning, you focus on your brand, and I mean really two things. Your brand, and actually probably three things. Your brand, just early traction. You got to show that whatever your product is, you have there's retention there. There's people coming back and wanting it a second, third, fourth time. You're gonna have to do a lot of that lifting, yourself most likely, and you're gonna learn a lot through that. And then just being front and center with investors, making sure that you have to remember, like, raising money is competitive. I think Revolution, the year that we raised our Series A from them, they looked at 2,500 companies and they invested in 3. But we didn't give up the first, 1 or 2 times we pitched them. It wasn't great, but we didn't know what we were doing either, and so we finally got our legs underneath us, but we didn't give up. And so I think those three things are kind of the most important things you can focus on early on.
Yeah, I think having an idea that is good is pretty important, right? Something that you can convince an investor that people will buy, and then just I think keeping a clean business. Don't have a cap table with 3,000 people on it, because you'll never get funding. Nobody's going to want to have those conversations. So trying to do that, trying to structure the don't have a very exotic corporate structure. Those sorts of things. Don't be a company founded in don't be a company founded in Germany with some arcane corporate structure that now you want to come in. Why are you in Baltimore and a German-based guy? That sort of thing. So, just simple is better. Like Chris mentioned, you see a lot. You talk to a lot of people, and a lot of times there's so much inflow and so many things that you have to review that if it's not perfectly clean, it doesn't make it through. And so any little hiccup in that flow, and you're not going to get past the 2,500 stage for Revolution. You're going to get get drummed out very early, and so those are the sorts of things that I would say are important, and they just sort of go through successive rounds. And you probably ought to have ideas of the business metrics that are going to get you to those new rounds. When we hit this, we in every company that I've worked with, we talk about when we hit this, that's when it's the right time for us to raise money. Order Up had that much bigger scale, but Kinglet, who I'm also working with, we still have the same things. Here are the metrics that we need to go and and go to the next step. And so just keeping an eye on those things helps you to drive the business forward.
Let's give these guys another round.